I'm writing to you today because I have a question that might be applicable to many of your listeners. I'm sure it is, having read this. I'm 6 months pregnant with my firstborn. I'm the breadwinner in my family, more so now that my husband is out of a job due to COVID. We follow all your financial pearls, and I read persistently about finance. One thing that I just started doing in light of the upcoming addition of the families in regards to all the things I should be preparing financially for the upcoming birth of my child, other than opening a 529 account, which I would actually argue is a pretty small part of this. My husband's not very interested in finances, and I've been managing it all for the most part. Common situation, although I wish people would work together better as couples on their money. I already have disability, term life, umbrella, and actually have increased the payouts for my disability and term life recently. It's wonderful. Good job. Some of my concerns, questions are, 1, birth can be traumatic and at times deadly to mothers. I worry that if I die during my delivery and my child survives, my husband and child may not receive all of my assets. Might even lose the house since my paycheck pays for the majority of the mortgage. My husband is the beneficiary of my accounts and life insurance in the event of my death, but is this enough? I live in Philadelphia, if that matters. Well, this is the purpose of life insurance, right? The idea with life insurance is that it replaces your portfolio at financial independence. So if you need $5 million so that you and your husband never have to work again, then the total of your portfolio plus your life insurance should be $5 million. That's how it works. That's the point of term life insurance. And as your portfolio grows closer and closer and closer to that number, you can decrease the amount of insurance you have until you become financially independent. You can drop your term life insurance. So if the amount of life insurance you have is not enough to pay off the mortgage, to provide for your husband and child to be able to stay in that home and live more or less the same life they're living now, then you need more insurance. That's probably going to be a little bit difficult. I think you said you're 6 months pregnant. It's going to be tough to get life insurance at this point. But after you deliver and it's been a few months and everything went well, as it does most of the time and hopefully will this time, it's time to increase your life insurance. You don't have enough. Sounds like you just increased it though, so you're better off than you would have been. But basically, that's how you cover this particular risk. Okay, number 2. I was contemplating estate planning, but wouldn't it make more sense to do it after the baby is here? Well, I mean, the ideal time to do estate planning is the day before you die, because then it's easy to tell where everything goes. But the problem is you don't know when you're going to die. And so you should do estate planning now. That's the best time. And then update it as you go along. Okay. Putting a will in place is kind of the bare minimum, especially once you have a kid. That will should dictate not only who's going to take care of that kid in the event you and your spouse die, but also who's going to manage the money in the event that you and your spouse die. And so, yes, it's probably important to get that in place. Yes, you're going to need to update it as you have children, as you get married, as you have divorces, as all these life changes happen. But that's not a reason not to get started doing it. So I like your idea of at least doing some minimal estate planning at this point. Last question. Are there books, articles that talk about financial preparations and strategies and setting up secure financial plans for children, including how to slowly transfer wealth and the pros and cons for each? For example, opening a 529 account when the child is such and such age for this amount, ways your children can start earning so they can start a Roth IRA early, different types of trusts, etc. Yeah, I've written about a lot of this stuff over the years on the blog. We've talked about it on the podcast. It's great to do all that stuff. If you're looking for a book, I think the best one on that particular subject is called Make Your Kid a Millionaire, I think is what it's called. And it goes through all the different things, 529s, Roth IRAs, UTMAs, trusts, etc. Even I think it goes through some types of variable annuities as well, as options to make your kid a millionaire. And the truth is, if you got 60 years of compound interest to work on that money, you don't have to put that much money into it in the very beginning for them to become a millionaire. But I'll tell you the approach I use with my kids. 529s, we didn't have any money when they were all born. So their 529s were very small until recently. And now we put in the max amount each year. And so we've got sizable 529s for each of them with the idea that that money pays for college, plus any graduate or professional school, as much as it can. They're probably still going to have contributions of their own from scholarships, from working in the summers, from working during the school year. And if they go to professional school, probably a few loans too, I suspect. We'll see about that when we get there. So that's number 1. You can open that in your name and change the beneficiary to your kid if you want, but you're only 3 months away from delivery. Just wait 3 months until you have the Social Security number and go ahead and open a 529 for your kid. then. Okay, number two, we have UTMA accounts, uniform transfer to minor accounts. What these are taxable accounts for your kid. The tax play here is that basically the first, I can't remember if it's $1,100 or $1,200 in income in that account is not taxed. And the next, again, I can't remember if it's $1,100 or $1,200 amount is taxed at their income tax rate. So basically 10%. And after that, any income above and beyond that is taxed at your income tax rate. That's known as the kiddie tax. But the bottom line is if you invest it tax efficiently in some index funds, you can basically get about $100,000 in there before you have to start paying taxes at your income tax rate on that money. So that's the second thing we have for our kids. We call it their 20s fund. This is the money for them to go on a mission, buy a car, buy a first house, pay for a wedding, pay for a honeymoon, travel to Europe. In some ways, it's our opportunity to see how they manage money before we arrange for them to receive more money in the form of inheritances later in their lives. Basically, I look at it as like, when would it have been really nice to get money from my parents? It's not in my 60s or 70s when they die. It's in my 20s. That's when I really needed the money. And when it made a huge difference, where it would have made a huge difference in my life. I wouldn't have had to donate plasma for grocery money like I was back in college. And so that's kind of the idea behind that fund for us. The one downside of that is it's the kids' money. In most states, when they turn 21, it's their money. If they want to blow it on hookers and cocaine, there's nothing you can do about it. Okay. The third thing is Roth IRAs. For any earned money, it can go on the Roth IRA. You can give them an equal amount of money out of your earnings for them to spend if you want, but the total amount that they earn can go into a Roth IRA up to the contribution limit for the year, currently $6,000 per year. And so we do that. I call it the daddy match. Basically, whatever they earn, I put in a Roth IRA for them. And the idea being that if they don't touch that till 60, it'll have 40 or 50 years of compounding. So how do they earn money? Well, once they're 10 or 12, they can start babysitting and doing lawn mowing stuff around the neighborhood. Remember, doing chores for you doesn't count. It's got to be for somebody else. As they get older, they may have more of a standard type of teenager job, and all that money can go into a Roth IRA. If you want to do it really young, you're going to have to be creative, though. One thing I did for my kids is, as you noticed, if you read the blog, there's a lot of pictures of my kids on the blog, and we pay them to be models for the blog. And that's legitimate. You pay them a fair rate. You keep your you all do it all by the books. You keep a timesheet, and you have contracts, and you fill out the immigration, or not the immigration paperwork, but the paperwork that proves they're U.S. citizens, and you do W-2s and W-3s every year, and you make it legit. You can do that as well. But I hope that's helpful for you. Let's see. Yes, she gives a few more comments that I thought were worth sharing. You might have noticed this paper that came out a few weeks ago about how surgeons miscarry at twice the rate of non-physicians. And I suspect if we look at other specialties, it's probably going to be increased as well. And the impressive thing about that paper is that happens even when you're controlling for age, work hours, and the use of IVF. And so an additional part of planning, and I agree with this, is probably cutting back on work in the third trimesters. And in a family where you're the sole breadwinner, that's a big deal. You add that, for 3 months or whatever, working half time, you add that to a 3-month maternity leave. That's a lot of cash you need just to get through this period. And so saving up a big fat cash buffer is very prudent in this sort of a situation. I think as soon as you become pregnant or find out you became pregnant at 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, whatever, that's the time to go crazy building up a huge pile of cash, right? Maybe even stop your retirement account contributions, stop any 529 contributions, maybe cancel a vacation or two, put off buying that Tesla, and pile up cash to get you through that 6-month period. And of course, to have that cash in the event something goes wrong, right? You might have some complication that keeps you out of the workforce for even longer. Other people have looked at some of these other policies like AFLAC and found that to be a pretty good deal. It's a short-term disability policy. Look into any short-term disability policy you have at work. It may cover not only complications of pregnancy, but it might cover just being pregnant and just delivering a baby. So read what's actually covered in those policies. They can also help bridge that cash flow gap that you have. Hope that's helpful to you. If you want your questions answered by the White Coat Investor, record your question at whitecoatinvestor.com/YQA or click the link in the description.
My dad, your host, Dr. Dahl, is a practicing emergency physician, blogger, author, and podcaster. He is not a licensed accountant, attorney, or financial advisor, so this podcast is for your entertainment and information only and should not be considered official, personalized financial advice.